Greetings, it's Ian from RTO here. Welcome to Saturday morning, and it's good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Ian. How are you on this fine thawy day over here? It was all snow the past 2 days, and now it's slush.
It's just warmer here.
Well, it's still bloody freezing over here, mate, but
Yeah.
still.
Well, my thermometer yesterday didn't get above -1.
Did it not? Oh, well, it's not that. Well, when I say it's freezing, it was 6 whenever I went out this morning to the supermarket in the car. So, but at least it's starting to thaw, and I'll be back to work tomorrow. So,
Anyway, Richard's going to explain what we're doing today because it was his idea.
okay. Well, some time back, about 6 months ago, I did a top 10 list of my true favorite artists. And the reason I did that was because way back during the pandemic, I did my top 100 favorite artists, which was based on mathematical data, spreadsheets, blah, 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 blah. And it didn't quite work out as I would expected. So from the heart, I did my top 10 true artists. And I know that you did at Christmas your top 100. So I thought, let's take the top 10 of each of our lists and present their worst album. Now, their worst album doesn't necessarily mean it's a really poor album. It's just your least favorite in the catalogue. And that's what I thought I would do. So we'll go through each of our 10 favorite artists and display their worst album and the reasons for it.
Yes, I've even got some lovely letters.
I didn't because I only ever did a top 10, but when I go through this, I'll try and think of a couple of other artists as well. So
yeah, mine was very easy because I just went for the next 5 down in my list.
Oh, well, of course. Well, I have to start thinking here. Whenever you're going through yours, I'll be thinking of who else do I like. So let's do that.
Okay, well, that's the normal thing. Richard goes first and I'll go second. So off we go.
Okay, now some of these artists don't have very many albums, but I was so into them, I had to include them in my top 10 because they meant so much to me at the time. And that's the case for number 10, which is The Smiths. Now, The Smiths only have 4 albums, and I think 3 of them are absolutely brilliant. And one is Okay, which is my least favorite, and it's their last one from 1987, and it's Strange Ways, Here We Come. I think they'd gone a little bit stale by this time, and some of the songs just were not up to scratch. For example, Unhappy Birthday is a very uninspired song for me. Death at One's Elbow is also very uninspired. I also found that the production was actually a little bit more in that 80s sound compared to the previous 3 albums. I thought it was a little bit more contemporary and has since dated a little bit. However, there's still some very good songs on it, like Rush and a Push in the Land That We Live in Is Ours. I think it's a very good song, which has got a bit of a madness feel to it. And the big single was Girlfriend in a Coma, which I think is a really good song. The other 2 singles were Last Night I Dreamt Somebody Loved Me, which I think is a really, really good track, but not single material. And I Started Something I Couldn't Finish. It's okay. It just sounds dated. But there's one song I absolutely detest on it, and it is Stop Me If You Heard This One Before, which I think is dreadful. But it's an okay album. Actually, the very last track is probably one of the best songs on it. It's a little acoustic thing called I Won't Share You, which I think is beautiful. But overall, compared to the other 3 albums, it's way down the list for me. And that's my number 10, The Smiths, Strange Ways, Here We Come.
Yeah, I have always thought that album was them going through the motions.
Yeah, a little bit. And funny enough, the thing is, both Morrissey and Marr state it as the Smiths' best album, and I just cannot see it. I just don't see it at all. I don't even like the cover of it either.
It's not a great cover either. Yeah, good choice. My number 10 is Mike Oldfield. Now, there were some contenders in this. for the worst album, Heaven's Open. But I actually went for Earth Moving. There's just nothing on there that really grabs me. Now, you go through the tracks of Mike Oldfield, and I can normally go, oh, yeah, I like that. I looked at the running list, and the only one that I sort of like, see the light, but for me, it's just a rehash of a combination of To France and Moonlight Shadow. I'm not very keen on, Mike Oldfield when he has different singers coming and make like a poppy album. It just and this is just him going through the motions as well. It's not a very good album, and I very rarely put it on. That's how bad it is.
Funny that you say that, because I would have had that probably not quite last for me. Heaven's Open is worse. However, whenever I was doing, I think it was my 1989 list, I listened to it again. And for the first time ever, I thoroughly enjoyed the vast majority of it. I love the track Innocent. I think it's a brilliant single. And I like Holy with Adrian Belew singing. I think it's really good. Blue Night's another beautiful song. But my views on that album have changed. I used to think it was very poor, but now I actually do like it quite a bit.
I thought I'd give it a bit more love now, but I've never really given it any love. But like you, I think Holy's not bad.
Yeah.
But this album is definitely a album that I'm not very keen on.
Holy was a single in Europe, and it was a slightly different version as well, which is very good too. But yeah, I can understand you putting it last, but still. Well, my number 9 is a band that had 6 albums out, and it is The Jam. And this is a tough one for me because I go between 2 albums as their worst. Sometimes it's The Gift, but this time it is This Is the Modern World, their second album. And I think the reason being is that the 2 Bruce Foxton songs are shockingly bad. London Traffic and Don't Tell Them You're Seeing. And then there's a Weller track called In the Street Today, which is not very good at all. It's only about a minute and a half long, and it's just filler, if there ever was filler. But there is some really good songs on this, like The Modern World itself, and Life from a Window is great, Standards is great. And even Here Comes the Weekend and Tonight at Noon and I Need You. They're all good songs. London Girl, which was the one I used to love the most, is actually pretty weak. Overall, it's a disappointment on the after the first album In the City. The sound of it is actually better, and it's better produced than In the City, but it doesn't have the spark or the raw energy of that first album. And they needed a really good album to follow This Is the Modern World, and they hit gold with their next album, All Mod Cons. So for me, I think This Is the Modern World is their worst, probably followed by their last album, The Gift. But This Is the Modern World, my number 9.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you have a very successful debut album, which The Jam did, the sophomore is always a hard act to follow. And in this case, I think they tried to do too much. They were not, they didn't keep it simple. The sound that they had on the debut album was just incredible. It was plug in and go. This was trying to be intricate, and it failed. And at least they come back strong. And that last album, again, is, I think that last album was a little bit The Gift. It's a little bit going through the motions again. The band were tired. You could see the fractions were there, and that's a shame. But yeah, that's a very good choice. And it just proves that the sophomore album sometimes is the most difficult album to make. Okay, my number 9. Now this band, it's Led Zeppelin. Tough, because I don't dislike any of the albums here. I discounted Coda because it's a it is crap, but it's just a mishmash of everything. Presence is a weak album, but it has got some corkers. Now, I went for In Through the Outdoor, although I do love In the Evening. I think that's a beautiful song, and All My Love. But it was a little bit too experimental, and there was too much fiddling on it. too much synthesizer. And I don't think John Bonham's drums were used to the potential, considering this is the last thing we got from John. So, as much as I do like the album, as I think it is the weakest produced, and I dread to think what would have happened if they'd have made another album, to be quite honest.
I like it. I must admit, I do like it. My least Led Zeppelin album is Presence. I think Achilles' Last Stand is very, very good, but there's not a lot else on that that really grabs me. But yet again, I'm new to Led Zeppelin, and I think the change in direction for In Through the Outdoor was actually quite refreshing. So I do. But I can understand because most Zepp fans will put In Through the Outdoor as last, and I can understand why. But I actually do quite like it.
Although I've had it on this week, and I enjoyed it,
Yeah,
even though it's my least favorite.
Yeah, it's a good album. Well, my 8th favorite artist from the heart is Queen. Now, first of all, I'm not including Flash Gordon because it is a soundtrack. It's actually a sound score or a film score, more even than a soundtrack. So I'm not counting it. However, I am going to include Made in Heaven, but I'm not including that one. What was with Paul Rogers, whatever you call it? I can't even remember the name of it now. So, my least favorite Queen album. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
It's Innuendo. And the reason being is I think it is the most dated of all the Queen albums. I think Made in Heaven's a better album to start with. Of all the 80s stroke early 90s albums, Queen released at least 4 singles off each of them, apart from Flash Gordon, of course. However, the singles of Innuendo, apart from the title track, I don't really like at all. I think I'm Going Slightly Mad is really dated in sound. I think Headlong is a seriously weak Brian May rocker. I think These Are the Days of Our Lives doesn't sound like Queen. It could have be sung by anybody, and it just has no sort of Queen spark to it. Although the lyrics obviously are very, very poignant with Freddie being extremely ill. The Show Must Go On is an attempt to write a Queen song from the 70s, and I don't think it works. Some of the LP tracks I think are just poor, like Delilah's shockingly
Oh,
bad.
that's terrible,
isn't it? But it's not the worst for me. All God's People, I don't like. I don't like The Hitman. I don't like Bijou, although I can stand it. There are 2 songs I do like. I do like I Can't Live With You, and I really like Ride the Wild Wind. But I think what makes this worse than The Miracle is that The Miracle singles, although it's not a great album, are far better than the Innuendo singles, apart from the title track, of course. And I do like Party and Khashoggi's Ship off The Miracle, but they're 2 weak albums. But for me, Innuendo is the most dated and the most consistently poor. So that's my worst Queen album, number 8.
Well, it's funny, when I did my ranking, that was quite high on my ranking. And I did put it on the other day because now having a new hi-fi, I thought, oh, let's put this on. And I sat there and I thought, this is really dated.
It is very dated. It's the most dated sound.
And I think if I ranked it now, that would be a bit lower.
Yeah. A lot of the Queen fans love it. They really absolutely love it. But to me, no. Years ago, I would always say The Kind of Magic is the worst, but I have got to really like that album now, especially.
It's got some good rockers on, even though it is, I would say, one of the weak ones. It's got some good rockers on, which makes it think, yeah, good choice. And I think my opinion on that album has changed since I ranked them all them years ago. Okay, my number 8 is from Black Sabbath. Couple of contenders here that we had Forbidden, which has got Ice-T on it. Who would ever think that we'd have a rapper on a Black Sabbath song? Well, technically Exodus, whatever it's called, the one with the weird cover. Close, but the one I went for is The Nightmare That Is Never Say Die. This is when the wheels had totally fell off.
Is that a 1980s album? I don't know.
1978 was the last Ozzy Osbourne album.
Right.
Ozzy couldn't sing. There was one track that Bill Ward had to sing because Ozzy refused to sing it.
Right, okay.
I think it's called A Hard Road Good, and that, which is absolutely awful. There was another song called Breaker and Breaker or something. It's an instrumental because, again, Ozzy refused to sing on it. It's just a pile of dung. The only one that's not too bad is Johnny Blades. I like it's quite quirky, but the rest of the album is just absolutely shocking. I think I haven't played that album in years because it just irritates me.
The only Black Sabbath album I know is the debut. It's the only one I've got. And it's okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that one.
Well, my number 7 artist is Elton John. Now, I have a few provisos here. I'm only going to include the stuff before the year 2000. Although I do have the albums after 2000, I am not quite as familiar with them. So it's a little bit unfair to include them. I'm also not including the covers album. Well, it's not really a covers album. It's all songs written by Pete Bellotte for him. Victim of Love, which is the disco album, because all he did was supply his vocals. He didn't even play piano. So my least favorite does come from the 80s, and I had a few to pick. The obvious choice is Leather Jackets, but there's a few songs on that I really do like, and I enjoy the album quite a bit. And Ice on Fire, but it's got Nikita on it, so I can't include it, and I do like This Town and Cry to Heaven. So the one I'm picking for the worst Elton John album is Rage Strikes Back from 1988. And although it does have a couple of good songs like I Don't Want to Go On With You Like That and Japanese Hands, which is really nice, it's got some absolute dross on it, like Goodbye Marlon Brando is bad, Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatter's Part 2, which I was so excited to hear because I love the original Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatter's from Hunky Chateau. It's one of his best ever songs. That is awful, absolutely awful. Poor Cow is shocking. Heavy Traffic is rubbish as well. Since God Invented Girls is syrupy. I think it's got some of the Beach Boys backing vocals. It's okay. It's not great. And there's another single off it, Town of Plenty, which is very, very basic. Generally speaking, it's just a poor album, and I think it is better than the previous, or worse, sorry, than the previous two. Luckily, his next album was Sleeping with the Past, where he went back to sort of like a Motown sound of the 60s, and it really, really worked with the big hit being Sacrifice on it, although it wasn't at that time. It took about another year for it to get into the charts and hit number 1. So for Elton John, Rage Strikes Back is my least, and that's my number 7.
Okay, my number 7 is from Uriah Heep and then 1978 Conquest. By this time, the band was in disarray. Lee Kerslake had left. There was no... the only people in the band from the original was Mick Box. It was Trevor Boulder. Ken Hensley was still there, but Chris Slade was on drums and John Sloman was on vocals. It's just a poppy, wishy-wash album. Oh, the worst of things. There's just so many bad songs. The whole album is just a dung heap. And after that, Ken Hensley said, "That's it. I've had enough." But luckily they came back strong with a Bob Nog when Pete Goldbeat joined, which has got some great songs. Lee came back, and you got Devil Sell Your Soul, School's Out, some great tracks. So they did recover, but this is always, and it is, you ask any Uriah Heep fan, and this is the blip on the calendar. Really, it is just atrocious. I don't even own it.
Do you know, I've actually seen Uriah Heep live.
I've seen them
So,
loads.
well, I've seen them live, and they're obviously not my type of band. I went to see Status Quo. It was before Rick died, but he wasn't playing with Quo because he was quite ill. And Uriah Heep was the support band, and we got there late, but we got there for the last 3 or 4 songs. I thought they were actually quite good. So but there you go. Okay, my number 6 is Slade. Now, it's really difficult for me because I do like all the Slade albums. I love most of the Slade albums, but the 2 that I would pick out would be their first 2, Play It Loud and Beginnings. And I'm going to go for Beginnings, even though it's Ambrose Slade, it's Slade, okay? And the reason being is there's maybe a lack of original songs on there. But I think the big reason is that they hadn't found their sound yet. And I don't think they'd found it yet on Play It Loud either. It's a little bit grittier. It doesn't have the glam stomp. And there's some decent songs on it, like Mad Dog Coal, Roach Daddy, and especially the cover version of Jeff Lynne's Knocking Nails in My House. Play Me Mother is a pretty good song as well, and a good cover version of Martha My Dear. But that Slade sound, and I honestly don't think Noddy had his voice yet. That good, really strong, raucous voice. It sounded a little bit restrained, and it did also on Play It Loud, which I think is a better album because there are some better songs on it, like Poke Hill and One Way Hotel, etc. But for me, although it's a very sound debut, it's not really representative of the Slade catalogue. And I know they did change a bit from the glam to the heavy rock and then to the synth rock in the mid 80s. This is my least favourite period, is the first 2 albums. And I have to say that although it's a good album, Beginnings by Ambrose Slade is my least favourite.
Yeah, I tend to sort of agree with you there as well. Great albums. I play them. I enjoy them. But it took them a little while to get into the groove, and for Noddy's voice to mature enough to get the grizzles in. And yeah, it's a good choice, and I think it's a good talking point as well. Is it Slade or Ambrose Slade? But for me, it's still Slade because it's them 4 guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good choice. Okay, my number 6 is from Yes. Now you ask every Yes fan, what's the least favorite album of yours? And it's this one, Open Your Eyes. It's poppy. I don't even know any of the songs on it because I haven't got it. I don't play it. I don't want to. I had it, and guess what? I got rid of it. And so all I know it's the worst album.
Does it have John Anderson?
John Anderson's on it. It was that when they had Trevor Rabin in it. It went too poppy. It's a pop album. It's got no direction. It's just awful.
I have a couple of Yes albums. I've got Relayer and Fragile. What is it? Fragile? No, it's not. What's the green cover one?
Oh, the best one of the best prog albums in the world, Close to the Edge.
That's the one I've got, yeah. I wouldn't say it was one of the best prog albums in the world. It's all right, but not that great.
Yeah, there was a few contenders in that one. Big Generator, which is an absolute, was the album after 90125. It just didn't sound right. And the other one, Union, that one where the 2 fractions got together. And even in the recording of that, you could tell it was not getting on. I think the only 2 people that got on there probably was Alan White and Bill Bruford.
Right.
But that's another terrible album.
Okay, my number 5, and this duo only had 5 albums, and it's Simon and Garfunkel. And there's no surprises here, but their released is their debut Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. Now, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy it, and there's some absolute corking songs on it, like the title track and Bleecker Street and Sound of Silence. But there's some rubbish on it as well, like You Can Tell the World and Go Tell It on the Mountain. And although I do quite like Peggy-O, but The Sun is Shining, or The Sun is Burning, sorry, is a very good song as well. But it is mostly cover versions, and they do a shocking version of Bob Dylan's The Times They Are a Changing. But compared to what was to come next with Sounds of Silence, it's just nowhere near it. And, no surprise, Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. is my least favorite Simon and Garfunkel album.
Yeah, I think sometimes with either you hit the road running with a debut album, or you listen to it and go, they don't know what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in this case with Simon and Garfunkel, that album was that. What are we going to be doing?
I honestly think they just didn't have the songs, and that's why they went for a lot of these traditional covers. Now, after that came out, they sort of split up, and Paul Simon went over to England and did the folk circuit. And while he was doing that, he was writing a lot of songs and released an album called the Paul Simon Songbook. And I think it was only released in Britain. But basically, that album was full of songs that whenever Sound of Silence was a hit in America about a year later, because the producer decided to put electric instruments on it and became a massive hit. He then went back with these songs that he had recorded for the Paul Simon Songbook and re-recorded them as Simon Garfunkel. And the Simon Garfunkel versions are even better. So the Paul Simon Songbook is full of to-be Simon Garfunkel songs.
Yeah, good choice there. My number 5 is Genesis. Now, this is going to be controversial for a lot of people. As much as I like all their albums.
I know what it is.
Yeah, it's Abacab.
Oh no, it can't be. That's what I knew it was. But
now, I love Abacab itself. I think that is an absolutely fantastic song. I love Dodo and Lurker. Absolutely terrific songs. Me and Sarah Jane, brilliant. Keep It Dark, brilliant. No Reply at all. Thumbs down.
That just sounds like Phil Collins. So
yeah,
like
and then you've got the awful Who Done It. Oh, I'm not going to go too much because I'm doing my bad Genesis songs. So, but there's a few on there. Half the album is good, and half of it shouldn't have been there, or Phil should have kept them for a solo album. It's just doesn't represent Genesis, that album, at all, apart from the me and Sarah Jane. I mean, Keep It Dark's all right, but that's a little bit.
Oh, brilliant song, love it, absolutely love Keep It Dark.
But the rest of it, you can.
So you actually prefer Calling All Stations and We Can't Dance?
Calling All Stations was in the mix. We Can't Dance was as well. But I'm not going to go too much into that because it'll spoil my bad Genesis songs. So,
okay, fair enough. Well, my number 4 artist was Nick Lowe. Now, I'm not including his Christmas album. And even if I was, I don't think I would put it at the bottom. And I'm not including the work he did with Brinsley Schwartz, because that's a completely different band. And this was difficult for me because on paper, should have been one of his best, but I think it's his weakest. And it's 1990's Party of One. Now, it was produced by Dave Edmunds, so it was great to have Dave Edmunds back in the fold, like the two Rock Pile guys. But my problem with this one is I don't think he had really great songs. There's some brilliant songs off it, like What's Shaking on the Hill is a beautiful song. And I Don't Know Why You Keep Me On is a gorgeous song as well. You get the fun of All Men Are Liars, and Who Was That Man was about the fire in one of the train stations in London way back then. I can't remember which one.
I think it's King's Cross.
King's Cross, that's the very one. However, there's some really poor songs on here, and it's almost his last gasp at sort of trying to be a pop star, stroke rock and roll star. Sting Stang, Refrigerator White, and Honeygun, they all sound exactly the same. I think the album is slightly overproduced by Dave Edmunds as well. It's very sort of trebly in sound. Although you do get other good songs like You Got the Look I Like and I Want to Build a Jumbo Ark. But generally speaking, I don't think it's as warm as the previous album, which is Pinker and Prouder and Previous, which I absolutely love. And then the two Cowboy Outfit albums, I think, are great fun. This one, I just don't think the quality is there for all the songs. It's still not a bad album, and I do enjoy it. But as I say, it's probably my least of all his albums. Put it this way: your favorite artists, they can't all be at the top. You have to have a least favorite, and for this one, it's Party of One for 1990.
Well, I'm not going to say too much on that because February I am ranking Nick Lowe. So I won't say too much on that because that'll spoil it. Okay, my number 4 is a band that I've actually met, and I've been in a video twice. It's AC/DC. Now, I love every AC/DC record. They never really put out a bad album. My least favourite is 1989's Blow Up Your Video. Heat Seeker is absolutely brilliant. I was in That's the Way I Want to Rock and Roll because they filmed the concert bit at the NEC. They sort of come out before the show and says, we're just going to record this video. They did a couple of takes of the song, and that was, it was brilliant. But there are some weak songs on that album. They were in a bit of a writer's block, I think, at the time. Two's Up is not very good. Saved in the Nick of Time. Very mediocre rock songs. I could have had Fly on the Wall, but that's purely on bad production. The singles, Shaky Foundation, they remixed it for the single version, and it just proves what a great vocal. And they sort of made Brian's vocals better. Sink the Pink Again, they remixed. So that's why I didn't include that, because it's just down to they produced it themselves and it wasn't very good. So that's why Blow Up Your Video is at the bottom of the pile for me.
Is Fly on the Wall the one with the white cover?
That's Flicker the Switch.
All right, okay, right.
Fly on the Wall is actually like it's got a wooden thing with a fly. Yeah, great cover. Bad. It's a good album. The songs, because I saw them on that tour, and the songs from that album live are just absolutely fantastic. I wish they'd release something with them songs live, because people would go, wow, these are good. They were brilliant live, but on the album they were a bit naff. But it is Blow Up Your Video for me.
Okay, right, this is a tough one. Number 3, ABBA. I love every single ABBA album, and it's really difficult for me to put them in some sort of order, even though I did rank them. And I think I'm going to go with my ranking I did about 2 years ago. And I have a reason for putting this one last. And it may be a surprise for a lot of ABBA fans, but it's easy to say, oh, Ring Ring or Waterloo. But no, for me, the most disappointing album was the album from 1977 or 1978 if it's the UK. Now, why is this my least favourite? Well, it's got Eagle on it. It's got Take a Chance on Me on it. It's got Thank You for the Music on it. It's got The Name of the Game on it. And it's got I Wonder Departure on it. Now, the reason I was disappointed with this, because all those 5 songs are on Greatest Hits 2, which I got before I got the album. I got Greatest Hits 2, I think, about 1981 or something. I didn't get the album until the CDs in 1997, and I just went mad with ABBA. And I was looking forward to this album so much because 5 of my favourite ABBA songs are on this album. The other four I was disappointed with. So as an album as a whole, it's never completely gelled with me because I knew the songs from the greatest hits too. Now, Move On is a very good song, although I don't like the spoken intro by Bjorn. That was used for Stena Sea Link or one of those P&O Ferries ads way back in the 90s. And then the other songs like I'm a Marionette, wasn't that keen on. I wasn't keen on One Man, One Woman, Hole in Your Soul. I think that makes them all up now. But generally speaking, if I'm going to look at the tracks, yes, the tracks are better than, say, on the Ring Ring album. But an album as a whole, because I knew those songs first from Greatest Hits Volume 2, the album is always a bit of a disappointment for me, and I'm just going to stick with it and put it as my least favorite. Although I do love it, it's still probably my least favorite.
I love the Eagle. I think that's a great track.
Eagle's brilliant. That's one of my favorite. It's my favorite. That's my second favorite, actually. LP track. I'm telling you, it's just because of the fact that I knew them so well from Volume 2 Greatest Hits. I was disappointed when I heard the tracks I didn't know, and that's what spoiled it for me. So, out of the album. It's all right.
So, yeah, I agree with you. I think when you got 5 killer tracks, the others are never going to live up to the name, are they?
That's what happened.
Yeah. Okay. My number 3 is my beloved Deep Purple, a band that I really, really love. Bananas was very close to being in this thing, and the last the Mark ones, but the one I've gone for is Slave and Masters, which to me is a bad Deep Purple album, but a reasonable Rainbow album because it's the one that's got Jolene Turner. King of Dreams is brilliant. Fire in the Basement's killer, but it's got the slushy rubbish of Love Conquers All.
Can I tell you something? I have that Love Conquers All single, and the reason why I remember buying this sort of 10 singles for £1 Lucky Dip, and it was in there with picture sleeve as well. Never played it though.
That just, it's too much like listening to a Rainbow album.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear Rainbow with Deep Purple. They only had Jolene Turner because Richie was having a spat at Gillan, and the rest of because the next album was, I think, their 30th anniversary, and I think the rest of them says we're going to make a 30th anniversary. It's got to be Iain, and Joe was sort of, Joe's a great singer. I think he did when he was in Rainbow, but he just didn't. He can't sing the Deep Purple songs for Toffee, the classics. So that's why it was put at the bottom, because I don't mind it. I could see it more as a Rainbow album than a Deep Purple.
Right, my number 2, and it's T-Rex, and I am including Tyrannosaurus Rex here, but none of them are my choice. Now, this is really difficult for me because the obvious choice is Bolin Zip Gun, but there's certain songs off that I think have got a real good spark to them. So I am going to pick Dandy in the Underworld, the last album, and the reason being is it's a little bit too slickly produced, although the title track is absolutely brilliant. And the rest of the songs are consistently good, with Teen Riot Structure being probably the highlight. Tracks like The Soul of My Suit is one of their weakest singles. I Love the Boogie was thrown in there just to try and get sales for the album. There are other good songs like Universe and I'm a Fool for You, Girl, and Crimson Moon. Jason Be Sad is a bit ploddy, and Groove a Little is a little bit too reminiscent of sort of like a rock and roll type riff, which is not very good. But the reason I didn't pick Zip Gun is because I think it's more exciting. It's not as well produced, but it's more exciting. There's some really crap songs off it as well, like Precious Stars, absolutely awful, but things like Solid Baby and Zip Gun Boogie itself are very, very good. So I'm going to go with Dandy in the Underworld because I think it's just a little bit too slick. A lot of people think it's a return to form. I think it's good, Very good, actually, because I love them all. But for me, I just get a little bit more out of Zipcon than I do Down Down Underworld. So it's my choice.
Yeah, I'm a born for Zipcon. I just was never
Yeah.
keen on that album. Too much influence on the girlfriend.
Yeah, well, I actually quite like that. And I think it was actually toned down a little bit from the previous album, Zinc Alloy, which was really heavily influenced by the girlfriend. But still, I
Yeah,
love all.
yeah, I love all the albums. I even quite like the Tyrannosaurus Rex, but I'm more of the T Rex than Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Fair enough.
Okay, my number 2 comes from my beloved Marillion. Now, this was a tough old nut because they've never really put out a bad album. I haven't included Less Is More, which is when they did their strip down some of their songs. It's got one of the worst songs I ever put out. It's Not Your Fault, because all Steve Hogarth says all the way through, it's not your fault, which is drab. The album I've gone for is Happiness Is the Road. It's the most dullest, boring thing they ever put out. And they put it out as a double album. It's got one decent track on there, or two. Thunderfly's all right. And there's the one about Marzipan, and the rest are just dour. Absolute dour. A double album and 2 tracks worth listening to. Even when they play them live, they sound dour.
Well, what year was it?
That was, I think, 2008.
2008.
Yeah, you thought that when you hear, they're awful in the studio, they pour out Happiness Is on the Road. And I thought, oh, this might be better. They are still terrible. And Thunderfly, they had to restart because they got it all wrong. I don't think they were really interested. I think it's just a terrible album.
Do you think Marillion have had their day, or do you still think they're capable of producing something good?
Their last album was probably one of their best albums for a long time.
There you go.
But are they relevant now? I mean, there's such a small band of us now. I think it's one of them bands. They're still brilliant live. I think they are starting to run out of juice, and I know it hurts to say that, but I think let's see what the next album brings.
Right, my number 1 artist of all time is David Bowie, and again, this is a tough one. And it is easy to pick something like Tonight or Never Let Me Down, but I grew up with them. I bought them as they came out, and they do mean quite a bit to me. I will accept that they're not his best albums. The one album I struggle with the most, however, and I'm putting it down at the bottom, is 1997's Earthling. And the reason being, and the simple reason is, it's a drum and bass album, and I don't like drum and bass. There are some very good songs on it, like Little Wonder, 7 Years in Tibet, Dead Man Walking, and Telling Lies. Those are structurally pretty good songs, but it's the clutter and the banging and the thumping. And maybe I'm getting old, I don't know, but I never really sort of loved it, put it that way. The best songs off it are the one song that doesn't really sound drum and bass, and that's Looking for Satellites. The Last Thing You Should Do is not bad, and I'm Afraid of Americans is regarded as very critically acclaimed. I just never really got into it. There is one track called Law Earthlings on Fire, which is shockingly bad, and it's the very last track on the album. Now, he was considering putting a really slowed down version of the Tin Machine song, I Can't Read, on there, which was on the Ice Storm soundtrack. And it was going to close the album. I think he should have done that, because at least it would have given you a breath after the hecticness, or if that's such a word, of the previous songs. Again, they're decent songs. It's just the drum and bass arrangements that put it bottom for me. And so Earthling is my choice.
I think that was at the bottom of the poll when I ranked David Bowie, if I remember.
I think you had Outside even lower than that. I think. No, I could be wrong, but I know you.
Oh, it's I just don't like it. Good songs. You look at the lyrics; they're great.
It's they're melodic. They're melodic songs. It's just that.
You didn't know.
can't be bothered
Good
with it.
choice, though. I think, very good choice. So we've come to my number one. We all know it's Status Quo. Lots of contenders here. We could have. I'm discounting these three nightmares, the cover albums. Close calls. Perfect Remedy.
I like it.
But it's got some good. It has got some good tracks on it. Back to Back, because it's got the worst Going Downtown Tonight on, which is a pile of rubbish. But that saves grace with Old Rag Blues.
Yeah.
But the one I've gone for is Ain't Complaining. It is awful. It's poppy. Ain't Complaining isn't too bad.
I think Ain't Complaining is brilliant. I think it's almost like Quo do ZZ Top with all the electronics. I think it sounds really good. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
And it's got the awful Burning Bloody Bridges on it, which is a pile of crap. I'm gonna crash that. Oh, that is awful. Now You're Leaving is just a dribble. Who Gets Your Love is just thing. Cream of the Crop is just too fast. It's terrible. I just don't like it. I mean, I saw them 5 times on that tour. Luckily, they played some decent stuff.
You see, we're different when it comes to Quo. I'm pure Francis Rossi. You are pure Rick Parfitt. I know that because that's the rocker part of you. I thought you would pick that, but then I thought maybe I'll pick Bull of Quo or some rubbish like that.
Yeah, that was another close contender, but definitely. But I think the worst album out of the lot is Famous in the Last Century. That is just shocking.
No, it's shocking. So is Don't Stop, even though it does have All Around My Hat on it.
So there we go. So have you thought any bubbling unders while we've been sitting here?
Right, okay, I'll think some of bubbling under Electric Light Orchestra. Oh God, I think my least favorite Electric Light Orchestra, and I'm including Jeff Lynne's Electric Light Orchestra, is probably their last album, and I can't even remember the name of it because it's just so bland. It just sounds like the previous one, the one with When I Was a Boy on it, which I think is very good. Now, there is one really good song off that called The Time of Our Lives or something like that, which I really do like, but the rest of it is just bland. If I'm going to go with Mike Oldfield, I would probably go with, is it Light and Shade, the double one? It's just too much for me. No, sorry. No, sorry. Take that back. I'll go really, apart from, I don't really like the soundtrack to The Killing Fields, but that's the soundtrack. I'm going to go with Incantations because it's the same the whole way through a double album, and it's boring. And if I'm going to go with, say, the Rolling Stones, I would pick probably Dirty Work, which is just not great songs at all. So those are my 3 bubbling unders.
Yeah, I think there'll be someone pulling out his hair. Joe Jamfray, because Incantations is his favourite album.
Is that? Oh no, it's Maddie Pryor actually kind of saves that because she's singing in it. At least there's something there, but it's the same sort of with a no.
Okay, I'm going to do mine from what was my number 15 up to number 11 in my top 100. First up is Rainbow, and I've gone for The Strangers to Us All, which is the 1995 album. It's got some good songs on it. They put some words in the Hall of the Mountain Kings, pretty good. But the glory days are over. I think it just churning out old songs, new songs with a whole thing, and it just didn't work. Next up was my Iron Maiden. 2 contenders here: X Factor and Virtual 11. Although Virtual 9, sorry, whatever, what it is, has got the Klansman on, which I think Bruce sings better than the other bloke that can, Blaze Basley. But I've gone for X Factor. It's just full of rubbish. There's nothing on there worth listening to. Up next is Saxon, 1988's Destiny. The 80s production had even got to the mighty Saxon. It is just dire. There's not one song on there that I like. Judas Priest was next. Again, when Ripper was in the band. Oh dear, both are bad. But I've gone for Jugulator. It's just terrible. And my last one, and you're not going to like this because we're talking about Queen.
Right.
Or is there's a quote of the Contenders, The Miracle.
That was a contender for me as well.
What else was in there that I didn't like as much? A Kind of Magic was towards the bottom, but it's going to be Hot Space.
Well, you're just wrong. I'm sorry.
Sorry, James.
Well.
Although, of course, Under Pressure's good. Put Out the Fire is excellent. I like Last Blaster and more.
Yeah.
And
so you're saying 3 songs off the second side. The problem with Hot Space is side 1 is filled with sort of nightclubby, disco-y, Freddy, sleazy stuff. Even though Action stays on side 1. And most Queen fans, whenever they heard Staying Power, then going into Dancer, then going into Body Language, and then Backchat, they thought, sod this, I'm giving up. What they didn't realise, on side 2, you've got Pull Out the Fire, which is a great Brian May rocker. Life is Real is a really nice piano ballad by Freddie. Last Palabras de Amor is Save Me Part 2 with a couple of bits of synth on it. And Under Pressure, of course. But no, most people don't like it. I don't understand why. It's probably my 3rd favourite Queen album.
Although I do like the guitar solo in Dancer.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Whenever I don't like it. I never will, I don't think.
Oh, well, that's fair enough.
But I did enjoy the video that you did with James, and
good fun.
That was fun. And I sort of had a little bit of a more appreciation for the album, but it's still at the bottom. Anyway, that was a really good one. It's probably one of the longest ones we've done.
It is the longest one we've done. It's nearly an hour.
Yeah, well, there is a bit of a thing that you'll see in bloopers next year because Ian forgot to take his telephone out. But that'll be for Christmas time. Anyway, we did put an appeal out to you all, give us some ideas, and we've had quite a lot in. We've got plenty to keep us going. So the next time we're going to do something punk related.
Yeah.
We're not quite sure yet, but we are going to do something that's punk related. Probably
10 best punk singles. Now, the thing about punk here, I look at punk as 1977, 76 to 78. Now, there are a load of punk bands in the 80s, which I don't count because I don't know them. So I will be sort of concentrating on the British punk. Well, not necessarily the British punk. There's Ramones, stuff like that as well. But it'll be like the 70s for me.
Yeah, that probably will be for me because that's when we were growing up then, wasn't we?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's been a fun one. I've really enjoyed doing this one. All it leaves me to say is I'll be back on Monday, and it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from wrong way him.
Yeah, I put it back the right way, and you still cocked. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you all soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.